What's up, Savvy Expats? Welcome to the newest introduced panel to our channel, The Daily Expat, where I keep you updated on the latest current events, news, and stories that are happening in the Philippines so that you, as an expat, never skip a beat. If you want exclusive, more in-depth updates on the Philippines and the latest happenings here so that you're constantly informed as an expat, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter down below. Alright, enough said. Now let's talk about why the World Bank has recently projected the Philippines to be the fastest growing country in Southeast Asia. We all know that the Philippines was deemed as the sleeping tiger of Asia for its forecasted booming economy. But despite the projected economic slowdown this year, according to the World Bank's latest forecast, the Philippine economy is expected to grow by 5.6% in 2023. Now, if you're wondering how that compares to its regional neighbors like Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Cambodia, the Philippines is projected to grow by reasonably more. Not to mention, we're expected to pick up to an economic growth of 5.8% in 2024 and 2025. That being said, today we're not just going to take an honest look at the economy, but we're also going to dive into its strengths, weaknesses, present challenges, and how it affects you as an expat. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright, let's first talk about the economic strengths of the Philippines and why the World Bank has recently projected the Philippines to be the fastest growing country in Southeast Asia. For starters, it's worth noting that since 1999, the Philippines has sustained an upward trend unfailingly, not suffering a single recession. That is, up until the recent pandemic in 2020 that we recently broke a 30-year streak. Afterwards, however, the economy got back up on its feet, resuming its upward trend in 2021. By then, the GDP returned to a positive territory of about 5.7% growth annually. Now, if this doesn't sound like good enough news for the future of the economy, listen to this. The Philippines has also recently seen a declining poverty rate. In the beginning of year 2000, the poverty rate stood at about 28.4%. But fast forward to 2022, the latest data from the PSA shows that the poverty rate has declined down to 18.1%. That's around a 10% decrease in poverty that's compoundingly going down. Now, the third reason why the World Bank projects the Philippines to be the fastest growing country in Southeast Asia is because of our young population. Get this, the country's working age population comprises of 63% of the nation's population. In other words, a large majority of Filipinos, 69% to be exact, are fit to work. And what was crazy to me is that of that population, a recorded 33.4 million Filipinos in that age range are under 15 years of age. Well, what does this mean for the Philippine economy? Well, unlike countries like Japan and China, the Philippines has an abundance of potential workers for the future. Now, the fourth reason why the Philippines is projected to be the fastest growing country in Southeast Asia is because of its robust tourism sector. We all know that one of the biggest GDP contributors to the country is the tourism sector. I mean, how could it not? There's something for everyone here. Who wouldn't want to pay a visit to the tropical paradises of Boracay, Coron, and Siargao? And if that's not your taste, you can take a cool, brisk visit to the mountains of Sagada, Baguio, and Tagaytay. And if you're more of a city person like myself, you can enjoy the high-end metropolises of BGC and Makati. And last on our list for the economic strength of the Philippines is, of course, BPO companies. The business process outsourcing, or the BPO sector of the Philippines, is perhaps one of the biggest moneymakers for the country's economy. After all, it is the world's call center capital. And it's no secret that countless enterprise companies like JP Morgan and Chase have stationed their companies here in the Philippines just because it's more efficient and cheaper to hire out here in Southeast Asia than it is in the West. The BPO sector employs over 1.3 million employees, Filipino employees in the country alone, and it contributes to over $30 billion. Yes, that's right guys, dollars to the economy each year. So that just about wraps up the strengths of the Philippine economy. However, no economy is perfect by any means, and of course, the Philippines is no exception to that. That being said, let's shed some light on the 5 economic problems that are currently plaguing the Philippines. The first problem on our hand is the slowing GDP growth. The Philippine economy is projected to grow by 5.6% in this year of 2023. Though this seems like good news, this number is still lower than our forecast in June, which stood at around 6%. It's also lower than the government's economic growth target, which they targeted at around 6 to 7% for this year. Now, the second issue with the Philippine economy is the unemployment. Even after the pandemic, employment still seems to be a major problem in the Philippines. The unemployment rate stood at around 4.8% in July, up from 4.5% a month earlier, which means over 2 million Filipinos are jobless. Alright, moving into problem number 3 that we face, that is the fact that we have a soaring national debt. Like back home in America, the Philippines faces an issue of having national debt. Government debt has recently hit a new record in the Philippines of about 14.35 trillion pesos. That's increasing from 7% in July, primarily due to the depreciation of the peso against the dollar. And that for me is a double-sided coin because coming from the US, we do get the favorable exchange rates, however it does come at the expense of the Philippine economy. Now for the fourth issue with the Philippine economy, that is the high interest rates. The country's central bank has kept its key policy interest rates at about 6.25%, which of course means that it'll be harder for people and businesses to borrow money. In turn, this translates to lower consumption and a slowdown in the economy. This move by the central bank is necessary, however, to mitigate inflation. And that brings us to our fifth and last point, inflation. According to a recent survey by Pulse Asia, 74% of Filipinos were worried about inflation. Inflation rose to about 5.3% this August, and in fact, the prices for basic goods in the Philippines has rose so much that President Marcos enacted a price cap on rice, which is a staple food, of course, in the country. Now, this may leave you wondering, Evan, what significance does this have on my life as an expat in the Philippines? Well, bear in mind that inflation can of course affect the lives of expats here in the Philippines, especially those in the middle class. It can drive up the cost of housing, hotels, and other basic needs. In light of that, unemployment can cause higher crime rates, which can make the country less of a safe place for expats, tourists, and citizens alike. So to tie this all together, the Philippines has its own sets of pros and cons just like any other country, whether it be financially, economically, politically, you name it. It's ultimately up to your taste whether the Philippines suits your needs. However, a great number of expats, including myself, has fallen in love with the Philippines, and I hope you do too. Thank you for watching Savvy Expats, and we'll see you in the next headline. God bless.